On June 16th of last year, a dev named Rotus released a game called Poppy and Buddies. The game would receive a sequel on November 2nd of the same year. Today, I'm going to be reviewing these two games and giving my thoughts on them. I'll be describing all the gameplay mechanics, so if that's something you don't want, go and play the games first. That being said, I think the games can still be fun even if you know the mechanics, the first one especially. So I'll link both of these games in the description as well as the pinned comment. But first, do you like FNAF? Do you like fan games? Do you like events? Well then check out Night Shift. We've got FNAF, we've got fan games, we've got events. So go on over and follow Night Shift fan games on GameJolt. The whole team, I'm one of them, has been working super hard and is coming together really nicely. And we've got a trailer for the next Poppy's game in there too. So it's even relevant to the video. With that out of the way, let's get into Poppies and Buddies. I wanted to start this video by saying I didn't do any secret hunting. This review is based off the casual experience. That being said, there are apparently quite a few secrets in these games, so if that interests you, I highly recommend you check those out on your own time. I love secrets in games, but I'm pretty busy, so I just didn't really have the time. Now, when downloading the games, my first major criticism became immediately apparent. If you download both games at the same time, it's impossible to tell which is which. The file names for each are Poppy and Buddies, except one has dashes between the words. Rotus, please fix. Luckily, I picked the right game to start with, so it didn't end up being an issue. Hopping into Poppies 1, we're greeted by probably one of the creepiest renders of Poppy in the entire game. The menu design is great overall and really sets the tone. Going past the menu, I guess the first place to start is going over the gameplay for the first night. Poppy the bee moves through the cameras to reach you at the door, where you'll have to shine your flashlight on him to make him go away, while Arnie the ant will occasionally hide on one of your cameras, and you have to flash him to send him back to the stage. A simple enough gameplay loop, but when you can't find Arnie and Poppy is right at the door, it's super stressful in the best way possible. This is especially true on the second night. Speaking of which, this game only has 2 nights, which is a bit of an odd number. Usually games have 1 night or 5 nights, but Poppies has 2. Technically, I think it has a 3rd one, but it's a bonus night you have to unlock somehow. I completed the first 2 nights and didn't unlock it, so I won't be reviewing it as it is something I have not played. Anyways, the second game is just 1 night, so I think Rotus decided that having 2 main nights was a bit of an odd number as well. Speaking of odd things, unfortunately not all the controls for the game are explained within the game itself. I just had to mash random keys on the keyboard to figure them out, though the controls were intuitive enough once you figured them out. You aren't told how to turn left or right, or even that you can, and neither are you told that you can hold space to turn off the light. I assumed you have to click the button, but that didn't work, so that's when I started mashing random keys on the keyboard. Now, this game does have its controls listed on the GameJolt page, but that just isn't the first place you look. I mean, well, to be fair, it's kind of hard to miss. I just didn't bother reading the description, but still, it's important to have it in the game, I think. Better place to put the controls. That being said, the second game fixes this issue, and the controls themselves are super smooth. Speaking of the controls, I absolutely love the UI in this game. It fades away when you're hovering over it, which gives you a fuller view of the camera, which is a really nice touch. The whole monitor system and its effects just generally look super nice. Also, when you complete the night, you get this fun little pixel art of Poppy jumping up and down congratulating you. It's super cute. Moving on to night 2, we get 2 new animatronics, I think. The guy on the phone mentions 2 animatronics before he glitches out while trying to say the name of the 3rd, but I only ever encountered the 2 he mentions during my gameplay, so I'm not sure where the 3rd one comes in. This time, the phone guy doesn't tell you which character does which, but he does give you the names of the 2 characters and tells you each mechanic. He actually makes it a point that he isn't telling you exactly which guy does what, but we'll come back to that later. Actually, adding in this to the script right now, it really doesn't make much of a difference. Just knowing that there's a character that does one thing and a character that does another thing is more than enough information, and I feel like the whole "I'm not telling you" it doesn't really make any impact on figuring out the gameplay. So I don't. It's a fun story detail, which we'll get back into later, but next time, if there's something similar, I would like to see maybe you do actually, it is a little bit trickier to figure out the gameplay. I don't know, would be interesting. Maybe, or maybe not, I don't know. I'm just like adding that in, just freestyling, I guess. I'm freestyling. I don't know how to rap. Stop that. Anyways, so, yeah. Yeah. Anyways, all that aside, the mechanics for these characters are really solid. Lately, the ladybug will pop up on your monitor and you have to flip it down before she jump scares you. This one is pretty easy to deal with, but it's a nice touch and adds a little more action to the night to keep you on your toes. The other character, Melissa the Mime Spider, will make her way into your office. You heard that right, in. When she gets inside your office, you have to hold space to keep the light off until she leaves. If there's one thing I have to praise both these games for, it's how excellent their cues are. They're almost never so overt as to be distracting, but still manage to really communicate that a character is there or has left. Each character has their own distinctive sounds, and other creepy sounds that can sound similar to these important sounds but still distinct will play throughout the nights, seemingly with no purpose other than being creepy. But as you play the game, you get a really good feel for what sounds to pay attention to and which ones not to, and as you get the hang of it, it feels really great. Apparently most of the sound effects are from free sounds, so they aren't custom, but the sound choice here is still excellent. Speaking of the sound design, let's switch to an often related note, the horror. Generally, this game did better at startling me than unsettling me, but there are a few images here that are incredibly unsettling, like the main menu image I showed earlier and Poppy at the door. These games really have the potential to be super creepy in my opinion, but I didn't get too disturbed during my playthrough. I've built up a pretty good fear tolerance though. I'm not super scared by most games. Except the Help Wanted level with Funtime Freddy in the bedroom, that one's fucking terrifying, oh my god. The first couple times I saw Poppy in the doorway, it was pretty creepy, but after a little while I got a little desensitized. As far as difficulty goes, I'd say it's balanced just right. It's a short game, but I died a few times. Each time I died I learned something, and every time I came back I got a little bit further, which hits that perfect sweet spot for me. Overall, the mechanics mesh together really well. The only real criticism I can give is that sometimes the nights feel like they start off a little slow, but that's something almost every FNAF game does, and it also has a lot of advantages, especially for a first-time playthrough. One thing I did find strange though was that the door on your left is never used. I looked into it and found this render of Arnie the ant in that doorway on the game page, so I'm wondering if at one point Arnie was going to work the same way as Poppy, but just for the left door, but that's pure speculation on my part. Before we move into the extras and story, from what I could tell, the nights seemed to be scripted. That is, the characters seemed to take the same paths every night, Arnie showing up in the same location, and Poppy always went to your right door, always at about the same time. Mostly this works really well, but I would have liked it if Poppy would go to either your left or right door and randomly choose between the two, taking the same time to get to each, but it might give the player a little more to keep track of. Same for Arnie the ant. As it stands though, the gameplay is great. It isn't too difficult if you know what to do and pay attention, but if you get too casual, it will kill you quick. I actually ended up dying while playing the second time for footage. I don't think I've said much about the graphics yet, but for the limited resolution of the engine, scratch, they look great. The models themselves are fantastic and the lighting is super well done. The only thing bad I can really think to say about them is that there were a few minor visual glitches where the screen would kinda go black a bit, but opening and closing the monitor or flicking the lights on and off fixed it, so it wasn't really an issue, and it only happened a few times. Moving on to the story, the spin seems to be that you're in a training facility for potential night guards, which is a really unique concept. That's definitely the plot for the second game, though it isn't made as clear that's the plot in the first game, so I could be wrong on that. Whatever the case, you're being deliberately challenged and tested by Poppy Entertainment, which is a really interesting spin on the usual FNAF concept. Usually the company tries to hide that their robots are murderous, but these guys make a point of it. Unless there's more info hidden in the game's secrets, I'm sure there is, that's about all there is to the story. Nothing crazy, but it's unique and fun. The extras menu is also nice. You can get a better look at the characters and their jump scares. You can also choose to mute the jump scares if you like, which is good for people who pee their pants when Toy Freddy shows up in FNAF 2. I'm just kidding. It's legitimately a good option for people who didn't literally train themselves to not make audible reactions to jump scares so their mom wouldn't wonder if they're okay every time they die in a FNAF game. But with that out of the way, let's get into Poppy and Buddy's 2 Electric Boogaloo. I'm just kidding, it's not called that. It's called poppy-and-buddies.zip file. Okay, I'll stop. Poppy and Buddies 2 starts off with a computer boot up sequence I can only describe as completely epic. The polish on these visuals really caught me off guard the first time I saw it, and I audibly went, Yo. It's not as creepy as the first game's menu, but it's incredibly cool. That actually fits pretty well for this game overall. I'll get into that a little bit more in a bit. This game seems to imply it's a computer program in... I think it's actually just that the computer is running the AI protocols for the animatronics. I don't think the game is computer simulation. I wrote a whole paragraph about that here. I'm not going to bother reading it. It was stupid. Anyways, in this game you are definitely being trained for dealing with animatronics, so at least that's for sure. Hopping straight into the gameplay, we're greeted with some lovely descriptions for the controls. Nice to finally see them fully explained in-game. As with before, the controls in this game are really nice. In front of you are Poppy the Bee and Arnie the Ant with some new redesigns that look fantastic. When we get to the extras menu, you'll see how much better the designs are, especially Arnie's. I also love the little details in the background of each of their displays. Each corner is customized to fit the character, and that's a nice little touch that I absolutely love. You can switch a spotlight between 3 different modes, shining on Poppy, Arnie, or neither. If you have the light on one of the 2 characters, you can't move to a different view. This makes sense from a gameplay perspective, but not much sense in-universe. It would probably make more sense if, instead of the sliding switch, you had buttons you had to hold down or something. It would serve the same function, but be a little more logical. And oh my god, I just voice cracked. You need to keep the lights on Poppy and Arnie in order to prevent them from killing you. This is what you're going to be doing until about 3 AM. I have mixed feelings about this mechanic. Later in the night it plays really nicely, and the concept of the characters being on stage right there in front of you is honestly really fun. But the first couple minutes of gameplay each night are honestly really boring, and they ramp up from that really quickly, so it's a little bit of an abrupt difficulty change. This isn't as much of an issue your first time through when you're just learning the mechanics, but this is especially noticeable upon repeat playthroughs. Speaking of the other mechanics, I want to again compliment the sound design. From the right or left door you'll hear what honestly sounds like a toilet flushing to me. I have no idea what the sound is, but that's the best I can compare it to. If you hear that sound, or banging, you'll want to head to that side of the room and press your hands against the door. The audio here is balanced just right. I never had any trouble telling which side of the room the sound was coming from, but it wasn't like too overt where it was like just completely in the right ear or left ear and super loud, so like it was just perfect. This is a really fun mechanic, and when you have a character banging at the door, when Arnie or Poppy aren't fully recharged, as it were, it can be really stressful. A lot like Arnie in the first game. Again though, the nights start extremely slow, more so than in the first game, so it's not until you're a bit into the night it really gets exciting. The final character is Melissa the Mime Spider, and let me tell you, her new character design is wild. You'll find her in the ceiling, and you'll have to shine your flashlight on her to make her go away. I really love how she's hiding inside the ceiling instead of just on it, though seeing more of her design in-game would have been really nice too. Also, can I just say I really like sort of the parallax effect that this game does just overall. It's really nice. If you know what parallax is, then you can appreciate it. If you don't, you don't have to understand it. Moving on. Again, all these mechanics work wonderfully together, but this time it takes so long to get to them. The 2 biggest reasons I think the beginning of the night feels so much slower in the second game than in the first game is that in the first game there were 2 mechanics right off the bat instead of just 1, and because you had a bunch of cameras to look through as well. Arnie and Poppy are functionally different in the first game, but they're basically the same in this one. I like the stage mechanic, but I think it's much better as a supplementary mechanic to the other characters rather than a main focus. Imagine if Laylee was the only character till like 3 AM in the Poppy's one. I think it's a good comparison. I also got a bit desensitized to the character's presence a lot faster with them constantly in front of me, so there's that as well, but that might not be a problem for everyone. Heck, some people might find it scarier. Again, a little bit mixed feelings on this mechanic. The designs for the characters are generally really creepy though. I wouldn't really call Poppy and Buddies itself very disturbing, though, I gotta say. It's obvious it's going for more of a stressful / intense approach, especially with the music that starts on night 3. At 3 AM, dude, come on. I'm running on less sleep than you were when you wrote this, and, like, I'm still, like, catching this stuff. Anyways, it's obvious it's going for a more stressful / intense approach, especially with the music that starts at 3 AM, not to mention how bright much of the environment is. It succeeds at being intense incredibly well, though, at least in the later half of the night. The gameplay flows together really nicely with a lot of close calls. That being said, I think the character designs have a ton of horror potential, and I'd love to see more creepy and disturbing sections in Pop 3s. Hope I'm saying that right. Both creepy and intense FNAF games can be a ton of fun though, so whatever Rotus and Alex have in store, I'm all for it. Upon completing the night, you get a certificate saying that Poppies was able to find you a job with Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The music is all happy, but then becomes distorted when you find out where you'll be working, which is a touch I absolutely love. Like, I just eat this kind of stuff up. I'm not sure if all the models flashing on screen were made just for this section of the game, but if they were, that's pretty dang sweet. I'm guessing they were probably borrowed from a previous project or something like that though. Having completed the game and moving on to the extras menu, you can see just how much of an upgrade these characters have gotten. The original models looked great, but these new ones are just such an upgrade, especially Arnie the Ant. I love how he has the added personality of being a construction worker, which fits him because he's a worker ant. It's pretty fun. I actually kind of like Melissa's first model a bit better in some ways, since I feel like it fits with the other characters a lot better and is something you might actually see as an animatronic mascot. That being said, Melissa's new design is insane, and I absolutely love it too. You can probably see why I mentioned getting to see it better in-game would have been really cool. There's so much detail and effort put into the mechanical parts, and it's a shame you only get to see any of it on the extras menu. And sort of for a brief moment on the... I mean, I guess that's what extras menu are for, but, you know. Still, it would have been cool to see it on the ceiling. But it's also really cool hiding in the ceiling. You get the idea. Both are neat. Honestly, Melissa's redesign reminds me a bit of the style of characters in The Desolate Hope, which I haven't played but seen some clips of, and the art style is really cool. Though in the script I wrote, "Coo." What is that? Coo. The art style's really cool. I gotta say, past me, I gotta say, based opinion, the art style is really cool. Oh my god. Overall, the redesigns for these characters are absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, that's all I can access from the extras menu for this game since I didn't go secret hunting. I also wanted to point out that this game is made in Turbo Warp, which is an augmented version of the Scratch engine. You heard that right, the Scratch engine. As someone who's worked with less than conventional FNAF engines before, I have to applaud the work done here. I also know the games have inspired other devs that they can make great games in Turbo Warp too, which I think is really cool. So just overall, I have a ton of respect for the developers of these games. But wait! There's more! Video ain't quite done yet. Poppies and Buddies 3, or Pop 3s, is currently in development and apparently going to be in King Carter's event, but that's not the only event it'll be in this year. As mentioned earlier, me and a few others have been working on a FNAF Fan Games event called Night Shift. We have a ton of cool stuff planned for this event, and Pop 3s is part of it. So if that interests you at all, the link to the event schedule page will be in the description and pinned comment, alongside the links to the Poppies games. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty hyped to see what Pop 3's new trailer is going to look like. With all that out of the way, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you found some cool new fan games to play and be hyped for. If you enjoy this kind of content, I can't promise I'll make much more of it, but please subscribe to the channel or leave a comment and let me know you enjoyed it. It means a lot. And with that, I will see you all next time. I'm out. Peace.